Welcome back. In today's video, we are going to discuss one of the most important topics in community medicine and preventive medicine: disease screening. Whether you are preparing for MBBS university examinations, NEET PG, INICET, FMGE, or simply trying to understand how diseases are detected early in apparently healthy people, this topic is absolutely essential. Think about this for a moment. Many diseases like hypertension, diabetes, cervical cancer, breast cancer, and tuberculosis may remain silent for months or even years before symptoms appear. If we wait until symptoms develop, valuable treatment time may already be lost. So, how do we identify these diseases become clinically obvious? The answer is screening. In this video, we'll understand what screening is, why it is important, the different types of screening, how screening differs from diagnosis, the characteristics of a good screening program, and finally, we'll master concepts like sensitivity, specificity, predictive values, and serial and parallel testing in a simple and logical manner. So let's begin. One of the most useful concepts in public health is the iceberg phenomenon of disease. Imagine an iceberg floating in the ocean. Only a small portion is visible above the water, while a much larger portion remains hidden underneath. Disease behaves in a very similar way. The visible part represents diagnosed or symptomatic cases that come to the attention of doctors. However, beneath the surface lies a much larger number of undiagnosed, asymptomatic, latent, or early stage cases. These individuals may appear perfectly healthy, yet they already have the disease. The purpose of screening is to identify this hidden portion of the iceberg before symptoms develop. This early identification has several advantages. It allows early diagnosis, timely treatment, reduction in complications, interruption of disease transmission in communicable diseases, better prognosis, and ultimately improved public health outcomes. Apart from detecting cases, screening also contributes to disease control programs, provides valuable epidemiological data for research, and offers opportunities for health education and counseling. Thus, screening serves not only individual patients but also the entire community. Now, let us understand the formal definition. Screening is the presumptive identification of unrecognized disease or defect by applying rapid tests, examinations, or other procedures to apparently healthy individuals. The important words here are apparently healthy. Screening is never performed because a person is sick. It is performed because the person appears healthy but may actually have an undetected disease. Remember that screening is only the first step. A positive screening result does not establish a diagnosis. It simply identifies individuals who require further confirmatory diagnostic testing. To appreciate why screening is useful, we need to understand the concept of late time. Every disease has a natural history. It begins with the biological onset of disease. After some time, the disease becomes detectable by screening tests even though the person has no symptoms. Eventually, symptoms appear, leading to clinical diagnosis and treatment. The interval between the point at which screening can detect the disease and the point at which symptoms would normally appear is known as lead time. This lead time is extremely valuable because it provides an opportunity to intervene before irreversible complications develop. For example, detecting cervical cancer during its precancerous stage or identifying hypertension before it causes stroke can dramatically improve patient outcomes. Therefore, one of the major goals of screening is to gain this lead time advantage and improve prognosis through early intervention. Let us now look at the different types of screening. The first is mass screening. Here, the entire eligible population is screened regardless of individual risk factors. Examples include vision screening among school children or population-based breast cancer screening in selected age groups. The second is high risk or targeted screening. Instead of screening everyone, only individuals with increased risk are selected. For example, screening smokers for lung disease or screening individuals with a strong family history for certain cancers. This approach is often more efficient because the disease prevalence is higher in the selected group. The third type is multiphasic screening. Here, two or more screening tests are performed simultaneously during a single visit. For instance, during a routine health checkup, a person may undergo blood pressure measurement, blood glucose estimation, BMI assessment, lipid profile, and vision testing all at once. The final type is opportunistic screening. This occurs when individuals visit healthcare facilities for some unrelated complaint, and healthcare providers use that opportunity to perform screening. For example, measuring blood pressure in every adult visiting an outpatient department. Regardless of the reason for consultation, this strategy helps detect diseases that might otherwise remain unnoticed. A common examination question asks students to differentiate between screening and diagnostic tests. Understanding this distinction is very important. A screening test is performed on apparently healthy individuals to identify those who may have disease. A diagnostic test, on the other hand, is performed on people who already have symptoms or clinical suspicion of disease. Screening is generally applied to large populations, whereas diagnosis is performed on individual patients. Screening tests are usually simple, inexpensive, rapid, and less invasive because they must be applied to thousands of people. Diagnostic tests are more detailed, more accurate, and often more expensive because they are intended to confirm or exclude disease. Another important difference is that screening usually uses a predetermined cutoff value to classify individuals as positive or negative. Diagnostic decisions are made using a combination of clinical history, physical examination, laboratory investigations, imaging, and other evidence. Finally, the outcome is also different. A positive screening result only identifies a person who requires further evaluation. It is never the basis for definitive treatment. Treatment should begin only after confirmation through appropriate diagnostic tests. This distinction is frequently tested in undergraduate and postgraduate examinations, so make sure you remember it clearly. One important question now arises: can every disease be screened? The answer is no. Not every disease is suitable for screening. For a screening program to be successful, certain conditions must be satisfied. These principles were first proposed by Wilson and Jungner and continue to guide screening programs across the world. First, the disease should be an important public health problem. Screening thousands of people makes sense only if the disease has significant morbidity, mortality, or economic impact. Conditions like hypertension, diabetes, cervical cancer, breast cancer, and tuberculosis are excellent examples. Second, there should be an effective treatment available. There is little value in detecting a disease early if no intervention exists to improve the patient's outcome. Third, facilities for diagnosis and treatment should be available. Identifying patients without being able to confirm the diagnosis or offer treatment creates anxiety without providing benefit. Fourth, the disease should have a recognizable latent or preclinical stage. This is perhaps one of the most important criteria. There must be a period during which the disease is detectable by screening but has not yet produced symptoms. This window provides the opportunity for early intervention. Fifth, there should be a suitable screening test. The test should be simple, safe, acceptable, rapid, reliable, and reasonably accurate. Finally, the cost of screening should be economically justified. A screening program should provide more benefit than harm and should be affordable for the healthcare system. Whenever you are asked about the criteria for screening in an examination, remember that screening is worthwhile only when early detection changes the outcome of the disease. Now let's discuss another important topic, the characteristics of an ideal screening test. An ideal screening test should be easy to perform, inexpensive, non-invasive, safe, and acceptable to the population. It should produce consistent results every time it is repeated and should correctly classify individuals as diseased or non-diseased as often as possible. These two characteristics, consistency and accuracy, bring us to two important concepts, reliability and validity. Although these terms sound similar, They are completely different. Reliability refers to consistency. If the same individual undergoes the same test repeatedly under identical conditions, the results should remain the same. A reliable test gives reproducible results regardless of who performs the test or when it is performed. Think of reliability as repeatedly hitting the same spot on a target. Even if that spot is not the center, the results are still consistent. Validity, on the other hand, refers to accuracy. It answers a different question. Does the test correctly identify who truly has the disease and who does not? A valid test measures what it is supposed to measure. An easy way to remember this is reliability is repeatability, validity is accuracy. A test may be reliable without being valid, but a truly valid test should also be reliable. To measure the validity of a screening test, we use two very important indicators: sensitivity and specificity. Let's begin with sensitivity. Sensitivity answers the question: among all people who actually have the disease, how many are correctly identified as positive by the screening test? In other words, sensitivity measures the ability of a test to detect disease. A highly sensitive test rarely misses patients. Therefore, it has very few false negative results. A useful memory tip is sensitivity rules out disease, or simply remember negative rules out disease. For example, if a highly sensitive HIV screening test gives a negative result, we can be reasonably confident that the individual truly does not have the disease. Now let's move to specificity. Specificity answers a different question. Among all people who truly do not have the disease, how many are correctly identified as negative? Specificity answers a different question. Among all people who truly do not have the disease, how many are correctly identified as negative? Specificity measures the ability of a test to correctly exclude healthy individuals. A highly specific test produces very few false positive results. The memory trick here is specific test when positive rules in disease. For example, a highly specific confirmatory test for HIV makes a positive result highly convincing because false positives are very uncommon. Notice the difference. Sensitivity focuses on detecting disease, specificity focuses on excluding disease. One tries not to miss cases, the other tries not to wrongly label healthy individuals as diseased. Another pair of frequently asked concepts are the predictive values. Positive predictive value, or PPV, answers the practical clinical question. If the test result is positive, what is the probability that the person actually has the disease? Negative predictive value, or NPV, asks the opposite question. If the test result is negative, what is the probability that the person truly does not have the disease? Unlike sensitivity and specificity, predictive values are not fixed characteristics of the test. They are greatly influenced by the prevalence of disease in the population. As disease prevalence increases, the positive predictive value increases because a positive result is more likely to represent a true case. Conversely, when prevalence is low, most positive results are likely to be false positives, reducing the positive predictive value. On the other hand, negative predictive value behaves in the opposite direction. It is highest when disease prevalence is low because most people tested are actually disease free. This relationship between prevalence and predictive values is an extremely popular examination question, so make sure you remember it clearly. Finally, let's understand serial and parallel testing. Sometimes one screening test alone is insufficient. In such situations, multiple tests may be combined. In parallel testing, two or more tests are performed simultaneously. If any one test is positive, the individual is considered positive. This approach increases sensitivity because fewer diseased individuals are missed. However, it also increases false positive results and reduces specificity. Parallel testing is therefore useful when the consequences of missing a disease are serious, such as screening blood donors or diagnosing life-threatening conditions. In serial testing, the second test is performed only if the first test is positive. An individual is considered positive only if all tests are positive. This approach increases specificity, reduces false positive results, but may miss some true cases because sensitivity decreases. Serial testing is commonly used when confirmation of diagnosis is important before initiating expensive or potentially harmful treatment. A simple way to remember this is parallel testing improves sensitivity, serial testing improves specificity. This single line can help you answer several multiple choice questions correctly. As we come to the end of this discussion, remember that screening is one of the most powerful tools in preventive medicine. Its goal is not merely to detect disease but to detect it early enough to improve health outcomes. A successful screening program depends on selecting the right disease, using an appropriate screening test, understanding its validity and reliability, and interpreting the results correctly using sensitivity, specificity, predictive values, and appropriate testing strategies. Mastering these concepts will not only help you score well in examinations but will also strengthen your clinical decision making and public health practice. If this helped you understand screening more clearly, hit a like, subscribe for more easy to understand public health and epidemiology videos, and leave a comment telling me which community medicine topic you'd like me to explain next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.